Fancy Farm, and I want to thank everyone at St. Jerome's Parish who's worked so hard to put on this event. I'm honored to be in my 8th year serving as your Kentucky State Auditor, and I've made it a point to attend every Fancy Farm I've been invited to. Sadly, this will be my last year as auditor, but I want to thank each and every one of you here and in Kentucky who's given me the honor to stand before you on the stage and to serve this great Commonwealth. Now, one of my favorite things about Fancy Farm is joke telling, even if it's dad jokes or in my case, granddad jokes. And this year's theme is, you might be a Bashir Biden Democrat. All right, are we ready? If you think sin is abhorrent, but the only thing that is a sin is voting Republican, you might be a Bashir Biden Democrat. If you've ever called someone a science denier, but then can't define what a woman is, you might be a Bashir Biden Democrat. If the only hunter you think should have a gun is Hunter Biden, you might be a Bashir Biden Democrat. If you think shutting down a church will save a life, but shutting down an abortion clinic, you might be a Bashir Biden Democrat. If your ideal of good public policy is taking credit for other people's work, you might be a Bashir Biden Democrat. If you want to sell a combined pack of Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head parts and call the toy gender-neutral potato head, you might be a Bashir Biden Democrat. If you think communicating with the General Assembly is putting their number on the do not call list, you might be a Bashir Biden Democrat. And sadly, if you've ever vetoed a bill protecting children from mutilation and teachers from being bullied by Education Commissioner, you are definitely a Bashir. Now, as I close, please don't be deceived. There's only one party that wants to protect your children's innocence, protect your safety, and protect your Kentucky family values, and that's the Republican Party. And I look forward to our next governor, Daniel Cameron, and the entire Republican slate defending the beliefs that Kentuckians and I hold so dear. Thank you, God bless, and I appreciate you.
That's amazing. That's why Fancy Farm is so great. You really get these great speeches that can kind of get to the heart of the issue. And using humor and using direct language like that is really what expresses truth better than anything. And so we are privileged today to have the speaker of that wonderful speech, Mike Harmon, the state auditor, here on the station broadcast. And first of all, let me say welcome to the show. This is the station, Kentucky's Conservative Outpost. We're broadcasting live from the Kentucky State Fair, and we have the privilege of having some wonderful guests on this week here at the fair. And so Mike Harmon, our state auditor who gave that wonderful speech, is here with us. Mike, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. My honor, my pleasure.
Yeah, and I got a sense you wrote that yourself, right?
Yeah. Yes. I wrote the initial script, and I had some friends. We kind of knocked it around, so they might toss in a few jokes and things like that.
That's awesome.
But it was a combined project, but I wrote the initial rough draft.
Beautiful,
yes.
Beautiful. How you know if you're a Bashir Biden Democrat.
Exactly.
Right. That's
exactly.
Great. That's great. Well, you have our co-host, Bob Scott. And Bob, that's great. Have you been to Fancy Farm? Actually,
I have not.
Okay, I have not.
But
either.
After hearing that speech, I think I'm going to have to go next year.
That's right. It's just so far out in Western Kentucky. But
it's fun. It's fun. I haven't missed one. I've been to every one I've been invited to.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I've been on the stage every time. Yeah. But I've been to everyone I've been invited to since 2015.
Wow. What was the mood there with especially the Cameron candidacy is versus Bashir? What's your sense of it right now?
It was very charged, very positive towards the Republicans. I mean, it was split, but I mean the Republicans had a lot of energy. The Democrats, from what we could tell, bust in a lot of people. Some of them, if you look at license plates, were actually from out of state, not even Kentuckians.
That's right.
But it was very charged, very fun. I was honored and loved to close strong. Like I said, I've done it every year. It's one of my favorite things to do politically. And so we had a good time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for speaking those words and speaking truth to power, because the state needs that. And so now you ran for governor. You were one of the candidates.
In fact, if you recall, we had him on as a guest.
That's right. Exactly right. You were a guest on one of our programs. And you were a candidate in the primary, in the Republican primary against Cameron. And so we haven't spoke to you since the primary. So how do you feel about the race as it sits now versus Cameron versus Beshear? Or can you handicap the race right now?
Sure. I feel really good about it. Daniel's a great guy. He made a great lieutenant pick in Robbie Mills. He's going to get it done. It's going to be a very tight race. I think all the down tickets going to blow all the Democrats away. The governor's race, because the Democrats are putting everything in that particular race, it's going to be tight. But if I were to predict today, I think just looking at polling and adjusting for some of the problems that they have in polling, my guess is Daniel will win with 3 to 4%. Of course, I'm backing Daniel all the way. When I was campaigning for governor, I told everybody that our one goal was make sure that Andy Beshear was a one-term governor. And if I wasn't blessed with the nomination, I was going to support who was. And like I said, Daniel will make an exceptional governor. We just got to get him elected.
Yeah, and I want to chime in on that because Mike was very clear and adamant that he was going to do just what he said. And he is a man of his word. There has been no one out working harder to see Daniel Cameron get elected as the next governor than Mike Harmon. I've been very impressed, by the way, how hard you have worked, very selflessly, going. In fact, I think just about every day I'll pick up something in the media and I'll see you in the western part of the state or central part of Kentucky or even eastern Kentucky, and you're to be commended for that.
Well, and we have such a great candidate as Daniel. It makes it so much easier. He's a Christian. He's a strong individual. He's a man of good character. If we had more time, I could tell you a few stories about on the campaign trail that he did. It was just so wonderful. He found out about my wife had a thyroid tumor that she had to have removed, and I got a text from him and said, what's your favorite soup? And, what's your address? So he sent some soup to Lynn and I, Peaches and Pawpaw to our grandkids. I had to tease them at not this year Fancy Farm, but the previous Fancy Farm. I was like, we really appreciate the soup, but I don't know if I like the fact you're trying to win my wife's vote away with soup and rolls. So that's the type of a character and the man that he, and of course his lovely wife, Mackenzie, they have a wonderful son, Theodore. And, another story, just real quickly, sometimes on the campaign trail, you can't be at every place. So my wife was speaking in Pikeville for me. Daniel happened to be there. I get a text. I think I was over in Montgomery County. And I get a text and it says from Daniel saying, hey, man, your wife did great. And he sent me pictures of Lynn speaking. So that's the type of a character, even though we were opponents. We cared about each other and we worked hard. So it's important for us to get Daniel elected.
Yeah, and those stories are important because, we're running against I feel like I'm part of the conservative Republican side in the state, but we're running against a very popular Democratic governor, someone who has had basically a half hour, an hour infomercial on for an entire year every day. And so that showed to a lot of people that he has this real caring, endearing, concern side to him. And so I feel like a lot of that was manufactured, and I think there's a lot of fluff there. But I think we really do have someone, Daniel, that has that genuine. And so let me ask you this: what do you think the race will hinge upon? Will it be the sort of personality issues or that sort of character issue, or is it issue driven right now? What do you think that's going to be the swing voters major?
I think it's all the above. I think as Republicans and as conservatives, we have to continue, and Kentuckians, we have to continue to remind the people what Governor Beshear did. You know, he shut down people's businesses. He sent state police out to our churches on Easter to take down license plates. Even though crime was rising, he thought people like me, the Christians, you know, were the threat. You know, from the standpoint, he shut down people's businesses. Were the threat. You know, from the standpoint, he shut down people's businesses, and then when they went to try to get their unemployment, you know, he had shut down all the in-person unemployment offices, and so you had one way to get there, and if you couldn't get through, which many of them didn't, you know, we did an audit. Every year we do the statewide single audit of Kentucky at the auditor's office, and one year we found there was well over 400,000 emails that had been sent to the unemployment assistance line, people desperate to get their unemployment, and they just archived it. They didn't even bother looking at it. We even found there were 10 employees within the Office of Unemployment Insurance that applied for unemployment compensation, even though they were still full-time employed, and accessed their own claims, even though they had been specifically trained not to access their own claims. So that was such a mishandling of all that. And to this day, my understanding is there's still people that didn't get their unemployment. And you think about the people that probably lost maybe everything, but a whole lot financially. You know, it just saddens me.
So there's a lot of mismanagement that's occurred that's really under the radar that needs to be highlighted. So, and to your point, so it's not a personality versus policy thing. The policies that Beshear advocated shows where his heart is, where his concern is, and so that shows his. And so it's really misleading to have these.
I mean, it blows my mind that we've got a governor that would veto a bill that would try to protect our children, and I call it Protect Our Children Act, that keep them from being mutilated from people.
That's right.
You know,
you're talking about Senate Bill 150.
I'm talking about Senate Bill 150. I mean, it's crazy they would veto that and then go out and say that he's not in favor of those when he vetoed the bill. Now, thankfully, we've got a General Assembly that overrode his veto. But I mean, it just saddens me to no end that we would have a governor in that position.
It's scary. And, you know, fortunately, we had Robbie Mills, his running mate. And I want to talk about your thoughts on that as far as that selection is concerned. Personally, I think it was a great selection. Would have been happy to see you in that as well. But he was one of the lead sponsors, you know, as I would call the tip of the spear on that. And I think that is something, that bill and the issues that it discussed as far as what you were just referring to need to be brought out even more, where people can understand that having a group like Sisters of Perpetual Pride, I think was the name of them, based out of California, but they have a Kentucky chapter. That was one of the first groups that he actually brought into the Capitol after he was elected. Of course, nobody wants to talk about that right now, but at least from that side, but it did happen.
And for those who don't know, that's a radical transgender sort of, you know, touring, you know, singing group that's just you know, promotes the whole transgender lifestyle.
Well, and they desecrate the image of the cross.
That's right.
I mean, they basically use our holy symbol as a striptease pole.
That's right.
In some cases.
Yes, that's right.
So it's very horrifying.
Yeah, the dress
that's not
is nuts.
Kentucky values.
That's not Kentucky values.
They're not.
And these are the things I I'm pray that start to be, because it really makes the hair on my back stand up when you consider he is so far out of touch, and I'm talking about Bashir with the everyday Kentuckian as a whole, that these are things that really need to be highlighted.
It really does. And I think when the average Kentuckian sees that, most Kentuckians have a shared family value tradition. And we've had to fight through so much, but we were talking about it before we, went on air, that, so many people are having to fight through working 1 or 2 jobs just to pay the taxes, to keep up with the inflation, to try to protect their family. They're not as engaged. So if they catch any news, it's probably local news, which sometimes some of that gets through, but most of it's filtered out.
That's right.
Well, what's the song right now that's sweeping the nation?
Oh, yeah, Richmond, north of Richmond. Yeah. Anthony
Absolutely.
Oliver Anthony.
The first time I heard that, it sent chills up me, just from the standpoint, because it speaks so well to what I think is going on, what I don't think, I know is going on in our country.
That's right.
And the beautiful thing about it, they're trying to paint it a lot from the left, saying, oh, that's just the radical right. Well, I have seen all kinds of spectrum folks
I've
seen
seen rappers break it down and cry.
Yes.
I've just seen just pick a category, and so really it hits not necessarily conservative liberal, because Fox was able to interview him. He said he's kind of middle of the road with his politics.
Codify one's right to choose.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15.
The whole country club Republican thing it doesn't work now, and obviously it's not holding water, and so you see a real a solid candidate like Cameron who reflects those values, and it's exciting, and so to your point. So Bob, the thought about
I think what's going to happen, what I see, I'm not a fortune teller, but it's going to happen in the state is, I think the state at large, and this has been evident with the last several elections that have happened, is going to go for Daniel Cameron. I think the battle's going to be shaping up in the big cities, Louisville, Lexington. You had mentioned, Mike, before we went on the air, that you won pretty handily both your race, especially your last race. And you held your own, in Louisville. Would you say that's going to be a big key to this race with regard to Daniel?
I think for Daniel, I think he probably needs to get about 38% of the vote in Jefferson County, and hopefully there's not as large a turnout there. But if he gets 38% and gets similar in Fayette County and does 65, 70% throughout the state, he's going to be fine. He's going to do fine. And
I got to believe that the complete mismanagement of the start of school here in Jefferson County is something that Daniel needs to really touch upon, because that has been liberal leadership that really has.
It really does. Rand Paul said last night that there was some new news out that he was very excited about, that was really going to help the campaigns this fall, especially the Republicans, because the Democrats were going to use the Jefferson County school system buses to get the vote out for the Democratic Party. So
good call.
It's getting close. We know people are going to start tuning in to the race itself around Labor Day. And that's when the battle really is going to take off, and I know that there's been some tweaking and adjusting, that's happened, and you're feeling going into the next 3 months, you feel pretty strong about that.
I feel good about it. I mean, the Republicans are right on every issue. We're right on the morality issue. Life is important. Protecting our children's innocence is important. We're right on the law issues. I mean, Daniel Cameron has the endorsement of the statewide FOP.
That's huge.
That's
you
huge.
Think about that.
That's huge. And we're right on fiscal responsibility. The governor's going around and bragging about how big of a what some call rainy day fund, budget reserve trust fund, some call. But that wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the responsibility of the Republican House and the Republican Senate telling him, no, we're not going to spend this money. We're going to put this money aside so that we can cut taxes, so that we can be fiscally responsible. That's why our credit rating's gone up. To be honest with you, he's taking credit for a lot of, industrial development, a lot of business development. But really, that wouldn't have taken place if it wasn't for the conservative General Assembly passing good business-friendly legislation. So when the information gets out there, the Republican Party, our philosophies, our beliefs, our ideals win on every single area, and especially with the Kentucky citizens. And when they hear that and when they know that and break through the noise, they're going to win. And like I said, I think the down ticket will win extremely big. I think the top of the ticket, just because the Democrats are pumping so much in and because of the image that's been presented the false image that's presented of our current governor, that it's probably going to be 3 to 4% in Daniel's favor.
There we go. Yeah, and that's a great point. We don't want to see Beshear take credit for what really Republicans have done in the state. You have the Republican legislature, and quite frankly, a lot of the initiatives that I think Beshear is benefiting from started in the Bevin administration.
Exactly.
So these are things that we should not let them take credit for, because it's just not fair. Last question. So
Sure.
We have a unique person in Daniel because of his heritage. He's African American heritage, and there is a thought that, and I think it's a good instinct that I think maybe those that are typically would vote for a Democrat, and which is of course obviously our African American community tends to vote a Democrat 9 out of 10 times, right? So is there a chance? Do we feel like there's a chance that with this story and who he is that we can start winning over that part of that demographic, and is the Breonna Taylor thing and how all that shook out? How's the campaign responding to concerns of African Americans that may want to vote for Cameron? About how that went.
I'm not sure specifically how the campaign is responding, but I think they're doing a fantastic job. Certainly, the issue that you put forth, I think that's got to be not the Breonna Taylor, but the other was, should definitely be beneficial. But the Republican Party as a whole, most people across the board, regardless of what category you want to pick, are typically conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are.
That's right.
I mean, the press
Yeah.
and Democrats want to make you to think that everybody's liberal, but most people
That's right.
are very conservative. So I think Daniel has done a good job, and he will do even a better job in breaking through that noise so that people can see the conservative values are definitely a good thing.
That's right.
And I want to ask, I guess, as a follow-up to that,
Right.
There is a lot more reporting that's now actually starting to happen, that there's going to be some kind of pandemic, if you will, that may potentially is getting ready to happen, including mask mandates.
There's a few parts of the country that have started re-implementing. It's very,
it's already
very small,
happening.
but it's starting to happen, which is unfortunate because almost all the studies show that especially just a standard cloth mask, what it really has no effect, and actually
Correct.
in some cases have a negative effect.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, obviously, if that does happen, as is being suggested in September, October, what do you feel the effect that will have potentially on the I guess the
But on the
election.
election or just the policy of
The
either
policy,
candidate?
the election, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I might be wrong. I don't foresee too many people trying to implement that in Kentucky, but if they did, I think that's just a reminder of all the bad decisions
That's right.
that were
Correct.
made when the pandemic hit initially.
Well said.
And so if they made that mistake again, I think instead of 3 or 4%, you might see a 10 or 15% victory. So
I guess that's the thing I'm getting to, was that draconian actions that took place were actually being enforced by the Bashir administration.
That's right.
Early on.
Well, they were being enforced by the Bashir administration, but it was Daniel Cameron who stepped forth and sued on multiple occasions
That's
and
right.
got all of those, taken out. I mean, the one he always talks about is if you're going to go across the river and get you some barbecue, if you were up in the Ohio area, well, you might travel 20 minutes, but according to Bashir, you're supposed to quarantine.
Right.
But if you travel 3 or 4 hours down to West Kentucky or Western Kentucky, got you some barbecue, you wouldn't have to quarantine.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense.
It didn't at all.
It didn't make
Yeah,
any
it didn't at all.
sense.
Yeah, Andy, go ahead and lock the state down again, please. Please go ahead and do that. Do it right about October 15th. That would be great. We would love to see the effects of that. So anyway, well, Mike, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you
Thanks
for having me. I
coming.
really enjoyed it.
And really appreciate your effort helping the Cameron campaign, and we're looking forward to seeing what happens next with you.
And thank you for playing some of my jokes. I always
Absolutely.
like to get another jokes.
That's great. That's great. Well, good deal. Well, great. Well, you're watching the station, and thanks to our guest Mike Harmon. We'll be back next week. Talk to you soon.